travelers to Midnight Atlas.
Welcome back, curious minds, to another deep dive. If you've ever heard, a really wild ghost story about a mansion, chances are it involved a certain sprawling, almost labyrinthine estate out in San Jose, California.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking stairs climbing right into ceilings, doors that open onto solid walls. The whole layout just screams mystery the second you see it.
It definitely has that immediate visual impact. Hard to ignore.
We are, of course, diving deep into the Winchester Mystery House today. And our mission, really, is to journey with you past all the spooky stuff, the ghost tours.
Right.
We've been digging through historical archives, architectural analyses, even looking at old tour scripts to try and get to the real story here.
Exactly. The goal is to unpack the reality of Sarah Winchester. She's the heiress behind this, architectural marvel, or maybe oddity, depending on how you look at it. We really want to separate those captivating legends from the documented facts, explore her actual life, what might have really motivated her, and, understand how this house became such an enduring American mystery. Maybe one of the most commercialized ones, too.
Okay, let's unpack this then. It all starts with the woman herself, Sarah Lockwood Pardee, born 1839. She marries William Wirt Winchester, son of the famous rifle guy, back in 1862. And her life, it had immense fortune, but also just profound personal tragedy.
Absolutely. And that's key. Yes, the Winchesters were incredibly wealthy, no doubt, but
Yeah.
their personal lives were just shadowed by loss. In 1866, their infant daughter, Annie, died, and reports suggest Sarah never really got over that.
Oh, wow.
Then between 1880 and 1881, just a cascade of loss. Her husband William dies, then her mother, then her father-in-law, all in quick succession.
God, imagine that, the weight of all that grief.
It must have been immense.
And this connects to her wealth, which is like a huge part of the whole Winchester legend.
Yeah.
What's the real story with the inheritance versus those huge numbers you always hear?
Right, the tourist info often throws around, $20 million inheritance earning $1,000 a day?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Sounds like the perfect setup for a spooky story.
It really does. But, okay, reality check time. She was definitely very, very wealthy. But her husband's estate in 1881 was valued at about $362,000. Now that's over $11 million today, so still a fortune.
Okay, substantial.
But crucially, a big chunk of that, $300,000 in stock, didn't actually come to her until her mother-in-law died way later in 1898.
Right.
She also had her own shares, 777 shares in the company, worth about $77,000 then, and the dividends on those averaged around $7,700 a year in the early 1880s.
So still incredibly rich for the time.
Oh, absolutely. One of the wealthiest women, no question. But that narrative of $1,000 a day from day one, it's, let's say, an exaggeration that definitely fuels the legend.
Right, it paints this picture of almost unlimited funds just pouring in constantly, which makes the endless building scene more plausible, maybe.
Exactly. It fits the narrative better.
So, okay, she's got the money, she's dealing with immense grief. What actually prompts the move to California? Was it really that famous visit to a Boston medium? That's the story everyone knows.
That is the famous legend, isn't it? This medium, Adam Coombs, they sometimes name,
Yeah.
supposedly tells her she's cursed by the spirits of everyone killed by Winchester rifles, and she has to move west, build a house for these spirits, and crucially, never stop building or she'll die.
Such a dramatic story.
It's incredibly captivating,
Oh,
but the historical records, they point to something much more mundane, really. Around this time, Sarah was developing rheumatoid arthritis, pretty severely, it seems.
okay.
And her doctor actually recommended she move to a warmer, drier climate. California fit the bill. Plus, she had visited San Francisco with her husband before he died back in the 70s and apparently had happy memories.
So practical health reasons.
Pretty much. And California was actively advertising itself as a health destination back then. She even invited her 3 sisters to come out and join her, which they eventually did. So it seems much more grounded in, health and perhaps seeking a fresh start after all that loss.
And the medium story?
Well, look, consulting psychics or mediums was fairly common then, especially for women of her status dealing with grief. So it's plausible she might have seen someone.
Right.
But scholars who've dug into this, they found zero evidence of this specific medium, Adam Coombs, or this specific curse narrative. Nothing from that time period supports it.
It really makes you wonder how these specific, very detailed legends just take hold, They completely overshadow the simpler, maybe sadder truth.
It's fascinating, isn't it, how a, let's say, plausible social practice, like seeing a medium, gets twisted into this very specific, very dramatic, unsubstantiated story that perfectly feeds the whole mystery angle, makes it much juicier than just moving for arthritis.
Definitely. Okay, so she moves west, which brings us to the house itself. 1886, she buys this 45-acre ranch near San Jose. Came with an existing farmhouse, right?
Yep, a fairly modest 2-story, 8-room farmhouse. She named it Lanata Villa.
Lanata Villa.
Yeah.
Okay. But she didn't just, settle in. This is where the epic construction saga kicks off.
Oh, yeah. And what's really remarkable here is Sarah's role. She apparently dismissed architects early on.
Really?
Yeah. She designed the rooms herself. She was out there supervising, constantly talking to the carpenters, getting their advice, changing her mind.
Wow. So hands-on. That was unusual for a woman then, almost like an architectural pioneer in her own eccentric way.
You could definitely see her that way. She was the project manager, the designer, the client, all rolled into one.
But that must be why it got so
What's
weird,
that?
right? The stories about her tearing things down, rebuilding constantly.
Absolutely. That seems to be true. She had high standards, or maybe just shifting ideas. If something didn't meet her expectations, she'd have it rebuilt or just abandon that part of the construction.
Like that tower story.
Right. There's an 1897 newspaper report mentioning a 7-story tower being torn down and rebuilt 16 times. Whether that number's exact or not, it points to that constant flux.
But you can see how a house built like that would end up maze-like.
Exactly. And it explains some oddities, like an exterior window suddenly becomes an interior window because a new room got added outside it. Then maybe she has bars put on it for security when it was exterior, and they just stay there. Leads to those weird interior barred windows.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's talk about some of those infamous mystery features then. Because amidst the weirdness, the house was also apparently quite opulent. I read about carved wood, intricate floors.
Oh, absolutely. It wasn't just bizarre, it was lavish in many ways. Beautiful carved wood walls and ceilings in the ballroom, really detailed parquet floors using teak, maple, mahogany. There was a huge brick fireplace with Shakespeare quotes carved into it.
Shakespeare, yeah.
Yeah. And lots of expensive materials. German chandeliers, Austrian art glass, fancy furnishings from Asia, French paintings. She had money and she spent it on quality materials.
But then you have the weird stuff layered on top, like that staircase. The one with, 44 steps that barely goes up 10 feet?
Right, the switchback staircase. Sounds crazy, but the explanation seems pretty practical. Sarah was quite short, only about 4'10".
Oh, wow.
And she had that worsening arthritis. So these tiny 2-inch risers on the steps made it much easier for her to navigate between floors. It wasn't for ghosts, it was for her mobility.
Okay, accessibility feature, not a spirit trap. What about doors opening onto like a sheer drop or a wall?
A lot of those seem to stem from either the constant renovation, maybe a balcony was planned and then scrapped, or significantly from the 1906 earthquake damage that we'll get to. Things collapsed, openings were left.
And those interior barred windows we mentioned, just leftover exterior ones.
Pretty much windows that got enclosed as the house grew around them.
Trap doors, surely those are spooky.
Again, probably practical. Some were likely part of an indoor gardening system she had. Think like drains and planter boxes to carry excess water outside through pipes. Clever, really. Not mystical.
And the annunciator, that big button panel thing. Not a ghost communicator.
Huh. No, just an early form of intercom. Very common in huge houses back then. You press a button, a bell rings in the servants' quarters, and a little flag shows which room is calling. Totally standard for the era.
Okay, debunking left and right here. What about the famous Tiffany stained glass? Those web-patterned windows are iconic.
Iconic, yes. Tiffany, no. That's a big one the tours pushed for years. They are beautiful art glass windows, lots of pastel colors, that spiderweb motif she seemed to like.
But not Tiffany.
Nope. Turns out during a restoration, they found an envelope inside a wall from 1894. It linked the windows pretty clearly to a glass artist named John Mallon, who worked for the Pacific American Decorative Company out of San Francisco. And interestingly, she bought way more of these windows than were ever installed. There are crates of them still in storage.
So, not Tiffany. But you can see how latching onto that name would add to the house's mystique, right? Makes it sound even grander, more mysterious.
Oh, definitely. Tiffany has that immediate brand recognition. Saying Tiffany Glass just sounds more impressive, feeds the legend.
Okay, so it's sounding less like a deliberately haunted puzzle and more like a very rich woman's constantly evolving, sometimes chaotic, sometimes beautiful architectural project. But then, 1906, the big one.
Yeah.
The San Francisco earthquake.
Yes, and that earthquake hit Lanata Villa hard. That 7-story tower we mentioned. It collapsed. Most of the chimneys fell. An entire wing and several upper-story additions were basically destroyed or rendered unusable.
So a lot of the really weird, fragmented parts of the house today might just be earthquake damage.
That's a huge part of it. Those doors opening to nothing, pipes sticking out where maybe a sink used to be in a collapsed section, staircases ending abruptly in midair. A lot of that is very likely just the result of the quake's destruction. It wasn't designed that way for spirits.
And Sarah herself. The stories sometimes say she was trapped in a room during the quake.
There's no real evidence to support her being trapped. She actually owned several homes in California by then, and seems to have spent most of her time after 1906 at her place in Atherton, not the San Jose house.
So she saw the damage.
Oh, yes. She had the major rubble cleared away, but she didn't really rebuild the heavily damaged sections. So the house stayed in that strange, partly ruined, unfinished state from 1906 onwards. The earthquake basically froze it in that condition.
Which really puts a dent in the nonstop construction for 38 years myth, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If large parts were just left ruined after 1906.
Exactly. That whole 2047 construction idea just doesn't hold up. She took breaks before the quake, too, sometimes for months, apparently just due to fatigue.
Right.
And there was a long period in 1915 where her relatives came to stay for almost a year for the big Panama Pacific Expo in San Francisco. No construction happened then either.
So why did she keep building, at least before the quake, if not for spirits?
Well, Bruce Spoon, who wrote a thesis on her back in 1951 based on interviews with people who knew the situation, suggested her motivations were likely twofold. One, a sense of philanthropy, keeping carpenters and craftsmen employed. And two, it was simply her creative outlet, her way of expressing her artistic, if eccentric, architectural vision.
A massive, ever-changing art project and a job creation program.
Kind of, yeah. A very expensive one.
Still, by the time she died in 1922, the place was undeniably huge. What were the final stats?
Pretty staggering. Around 160 rooms, 2,000 doors, 10,000 windows, though. That window number often gets debated. 47 stairways, 47 fireplaces, 13 bathrooms, and 6 kitchens.
Wow. Even with the debunking, that's impressive. A monumental achievement, however you slice it.
Definitely unconventional, but monumental, yes.
Okay, so we have the house, the physical oddities, many with logical roots and design choices, constant renovation, and that massive earthquake. But how did the legend catch fire? How did it morph into this haunted labyrinth story?
Well, it seems to have started relatively early. Around 1895, local newspapers began speculating about this wealthy widow and her never-ending strange construction project.
The media steps in.
Right. And Sarah was becoming more reclusive, especially after 1900. Her health was declining, that arthritis, she lost teeth, had neuritis, so she wasn't interacting much with neighbors. Her wealth came from guns, which maybe seemed a bit sinister to some. Put it all together.
Could get superstition, even though fancy, sprawling houses weren't uncommon for the super rich then.
Exactly. But her reclusiveness and the sheer scale and oddity of the ongoing construction made her an easy target for speculation. The narrative started building.
And a core part of that narrative became the idea that she had to keep building or she'd die, right?
Yeah.
That seems key to the whole ghost angle.
Precisely. That was an early newspaper theory, that she feared death if the hammer stopped. And from there, it seems, many of the other supernatural claims were layered on.
Like the maze being built deliberately to confuse ghosts.
Yeah, that became a popular explanation for the confusing layout, rather than just, years of changes and earthquake damage.
Okay, what about the bell tower summoning spirits?
Yeah.
Or the ghostly organ music?
Again, likely simple explanations twisted over time. The bell tower probably used to call workmen in from the fields, or maybe as a fire alarm. Practical things.
And music?
Sarah herself often played a pump organ, apparently quite loudly, sometimes late at night when she couldn't sleep. So ghostly music was probably just Sarah playing the organ.
Okay, another one. The lavish parties for spirits, complete with gold plates set out. That sounds so specific.
It does, but again, zero evidence. Her safe, when opened after her death, had personal things, mementos, a lock of her infant daughter's hair. No gold dinner service for ghosts. That seems purely invented.
It really feels like many of these claims just crumble when you look closely.
Yeah.
What about the gun guilt? The idea she was haunted by the victims of Winchester rifles? That feels psychologically plausible, at least.
It feels plausible to us now, maybe. But historian Mary Jo Ignoffo makes a strong case against it. She argues that back in the late 1800s, the Winchester Company was seen largely as a great American success story. Rifles were tools, seen as necessary for expansion, defense, hunting. The widespread cultural guilt about firearms is a much more modern sentiment. There's no actual evidence Sarah felt that way.
That's a really important point about historical context. Okay, the number 13. Her supposed obsession with it. 13 bathrooms, 13 palm trees, windows with 13 panes.
That's a sticky one, too. But here's the thing. James Perkins, a carpenter who worked there for years, stated pretty clearly that many of those features specifically linked to the number 13 were actually added after Sarah died.
No way.
Yeah. That whole 13 fixation seems to have popped up in a newspaper article around 1929, years after her death. So likely another later embellishment to spice up the story.
Wow. And the big one, the nightly seances in the blue room or a closet, getting blueprints from spirits.
Total myth, according to everyone who actually knew her. Her staff, her companion, Henrietta Savers, they all said she had no interest in spiritualism or seances.
Huh.
Plus, seances back then were usually social events, not something you'd do alone in a closet. And that blue room, it was apparently the gardener's bedroom.
The gardener's bedroom. Oh, man.
It's a classic urban legend, fits the crazy lady narrative perfectly, but seems completely fabricated.
It really paints such a different picture of her. Not this crazed spiritualist, but maybe just eccentric and private.
That seems much closer to the mark. Now, there were contemporary rumors about her being a bit odd, a crank, like stories she refused to host President McKinley or Teddy Roosevelt.
Right, heard those.
And maybe she did, maybe she didn't. There could be simple reasons. Roosevelt, for example, was famously trying not to commercially endorse products, so visiting the home of the Winchester heiress might have been awkward. But those incidents, true or not, fueled the perception that she was off her rocker.
But the people who knew her best didn't see her that way.
Not at all. Her companion, Henrietta Severs, flat out said Sarah had no superstitious beliefs. Relatives, employees, gardeners, the consistent description from those who actually interacted with her was that she was clear-headed, intelligent, and surprisingly savvy about business and finances. Sharper than most men, some said.
Fascinating. A completely different person emerges. Okay, so Sarah dies in 1922. This massive, strange, partly damaged house is left behind. How does it become the tourist trap? Attraction we know today?
Well, first off, when she died, the house itself was considered basically worthless. It was in significant disrepair. The contents were auctioned off, but the building itself, not much value seen there. But then a couple named John and Mamie Brown came along. They leased it and then later bought it. And remarkably quickly, just 9 months after Sarah died, they opened it up as a tourist attraction.
9 months, they moved fast.
They really did. And crucially, the Browns made their own changes to the house additions, deletions essentially curating the experience for visitors from the very beginning.
So the commercialization and the shaping of the story started almost immediately. They weren't just showing the house as Sarah left it.
Definitely not entirely. And they, especially Mamie Brown, who was the first tour guide, leaned heavily into the mystery and superstition.
So they actively perpetuated the legends.
Absolutely. And later managers did too. Keith Kittle, who ran it from the 70s to the 90s, was apparently very effective at marketing the spooky angle. Billboards hinting at ghosts, really playing up the superstition. Attendance soared under him.
Which must have really bothered the people who actually knew Sarah, right? Seeing her portrayed this way for profit.
Reports suggest they were quite distressed. Her old neighbors, friends, former employees, they saw these falsehoods and superstitious claims being spread and apparently found it upsetting. They remembered her as this clear-headed, savvy woman, not the caricature being sold.
That really highlights the ethical side of it, doesn't it? There's even that quote you found from a modern tour guide.
Yeah, feeling conflicted, saying they have to tell untruths and that their heart breaks a little for Sarah when they hear visitors call her a nutcase. It shows that tension is still there today between the profitable legend and the historical person.
Wow, that's powerful. Even Houdini got pulled into the orbit of this place, didn't he?
Briefly, yeah. He visited in 1924, apparently just out of curiosity about the weird architecture. He was impressed by the layout, and the story goes that he might have been the one to suggest calling it the Winchester Mystery House.
Huh. Leave it to Houdini to help brand a mystery.
Seems fitting, somehow.
And that name, that brand, it certainly stuck. The house is everywhere in pop culture.
Oh.
Disney's Haunted Mansion connection, movies like 13 Ghosts or the Winchester film, TV ghost hunter shows.
Oh, countless shows. Mythbusters tackled it, Most Haunted Live, novels, comics. Its cultural footprint is huge. It really proves the power of the legend they built.
It absolutely does. It's this enduring story, regardless of the facts beneath it.
It taps into something fundamental, I think.
So let's try and wrap this up. We've journeyed through this incredible house, peeling back decades of spooky legends. And underneath, we find a real person, Sarah Winchester. A woman marked by, yes, immense grief and wealth, but also someone with a unique, if maybe chaotic, architectural drive.
Right. And we see how her very real, very human story got completely transformed. Public fascination, newspaper speculation, and then deliberate commercial interests took over and spun it into this massive supernatural tale that's lasted over a century.
So connecting this back to you, our listener, maybe the provocative thought here is, what does the enduring power of the Winchester Mystery House story tell us about ourselves?
Yeah, what does it say about our, inherent desire for mystery, our tendency, maybe even our need to create these narratives to make sense of things that seem unusual or inexplicable?
And how legends, even when we kind of know they're probably not true or at least heavily exaggerated, still hold such sway over our imagination.
Exactly. In the end, maybe the mystery of the house reveals less about Sarah Winchester and her motivations, and much more about us, the storytellers, the listeners, the consumers of mystery. It's a potent reminder of how powerfully we shape the stories we inherit, and how those stories, true or not, shape our view of the past.
You have been listening to Midnight Atlas. For more journeys into the unknown, be sure to follow or subscribe on Spotify, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Until our next journey, stay curious.